So most of you have been introduced already, but people may have kind of come in and out of the room. So, Tony, just want to briefly say who you are and what you do?
Yeah, hi. So Tony Pearce, co-founder of Reality Gaming Group, and we're developing mass-market games that utilise blockchain and NFTs.
Marguerite Courcelle from Blockade Games. We have a blockchain gaming platform for a free-to-play game model, and also we're developing Neon District, a cyberpunk RPG, as well as some other experimental projects.
I'm Alex. I work for the BAUS.
You own the BAUS.
I work for it.
I'm Patrick. I work for Altitude Games, and I'm the product manager for Battle Races.
Hey, I'm Sebastien. I'm a co-founder and CEO of Sandbox. It's a decentralized gaming platform where you can make voxel assets and games and monetize them on the blockchain through NFTs, so sort of like on Minecraft powered by the blockchain. And we are also part of the Animoca Brands group.
Good. If people still have questions, we'll lead with your questions rather than me waffling on, but obviously you're going to be shy now and not have any questions because you've used them all up. But if anyone does have any questions, just kind of stick your hand up and we'll come to you. So our headline here is NFTs past, present and future, which I don't think means anything at all, really, does it? Let's kind of kick off. Apart from your own, I'll ask each of you in turn, just apart from your own games, are you active in buying NFTs? And if that's the case, why? Let's start with you, Tony. Do you buy NFTs other than
Yes.
What's the interest?
I've bought a Godson Chained. I've bought CryptoKitties. Yeah. I've played around with them, and I think it's more about how easy it is to buy and actually testing the UI of other platforms and other games. And I think that's I think we've come such a long way in 2 years. I remember sitting here 2 years ago, most people didn't even know what blockchain was, let alone crypto.
I didn't.
And actually 2 years on, it's amazing how far we've come. And I do think we should shout louder, because it really is incredible what we're doing. And I think one of the big changes I've seen in those 2 years is how much easier it's got. And actually with our game, we don't even mention blockchain and crypto tokens and never say the word NFT. So it's very much a business thing. Well, it'd be interesting to see if NFT becomes a consumer name, actually. But it's got to be called something, I suppose. Yeah. But we call it digital assets, items. That we don't mention tokenization, blockchain. We just want to make it really super easy for people to buy these. And guess what? You can trade them to your friends, and actually you might make a bit of money on it. And then if you want to dig deeper, you can understand how that works. Yeah, but it's, I'm intrigued on just the UI of other people's platforms.
Marguerite?
Yep. So we actually, at Blockade, we have to buy the assets ourselves, too, if I want Neon District assets. Yeah. So good. I've done that. Back early on in the space, I emptied my MetaMask through CryptoKitties. And I was really sad, so I can't play that game anymore. But then I would also say, I don't know if you guys know this, but OpenSea has you can set up your own store. And I love to mint for gifts, like my own NFTs, and then gift them to other people. So if you like creating NFTs, they're cool because you can do link to special. So if it's a relationship, link to something that's meaningful to you. And my girlfriend Josie, if you're familiar with her, she's an artist in the space, and so sometimes I'm really lucky and she'll give me something, and then I have people bid on it for 5 ETH. So yeah, make friends with your artists.
Well, we should actually point out that your kind of entry into blockchain gaming was through being a blockchain artist, and that's why your Twitter is Coin Artist, because you did these incredible physical art pieces about blockchain, about Bitcoin. So you have quite I'm not saying a deeper history than these other people in terms of NFTs, but you sort of have come at it from a different kind of angle,
the tie to the art space is definitely strong. Well, I really appreciate art, and so in Neon District, you'll see there's been a lot of love put into the art to the world, because I believe those NFTs should have a strong art aesthetic because of what's possible with bridging the gap now between giving digital artists essentially and game artists essentially to compete in the fine art space. But when you were talking about NFT becoming a consumer word, I laugh because Engine they came out with the MFT.
Did they?
And I was like, Yeah, isn't it called MFT? Something like that. Yeah, it doesn't mean anything the same. I will be surprised too.
Go on, no,
I was going to say you've already because I'm going to give a bit of a counter view.
Okay.
As someone who's bought expensive NFTs, I've stopped buying NFTs. I bought them for a phase to understand how things worked and to test a few theories. I think that the problem at the moment is there've been we've talked about too much emphasis on pre-sales, and I don't actually have a problem fundamentally with pre-sales, but I do with the pricing and the lottery aspect. I think they should be more like Kickstarters where those things are rewarded and fixed price bands with fixed limits. At that point, I would go back in, but I do not believe in the current models people have been doing the pre-sales with.
That might be something we might talk about a bit more. But yeah, Patrick.
Yeah, I don't know what MFTs are as well. No idea. I own a few NFTs, Axies, kitties really, which helped me to open our own crates because sometimes they are a prerequisite of like a crate sale. So we have like a kitty or an Axie, and that means that you can open a limited sale where we work with these companies together. Other than that, I'm rich on testnet, but that's it.
Yeah. But that is quite an interesting point, and I suppose to some degree, going back to Alex's point, it's a very lightweight kind of interoperability in a sense that it's kind of it's allowing access. So you're kind of in a sense you're kind of gating.
It's
you're gating
more
some content.
a way of like leveraging on each other's communities, really.
Definitely. Yeah. Which is kind of interesting. Sebastien?
So over the last year, I believe I benchmarked and bought NFT over 20 games. And to prove I did, every time I make a video recording, I edit it to shorten the time. So usually it takes like 15 minutes between the transaction approval time. And I make 1 minute long videos to show that I bought. So it's supporting the ecosystem, it's promoting them, and it's for me a way to learn, test the UI and UX experience, and understand some interesting mechanics that new game developers are throwing. Also, it's been very important as part of our company culture that it's not just me that buys NFT, but the whole company. So we have given to every single 40 employees in the company about $100 worth of ETH, so that they create their wallet and they force themselves to buy and benchmark and do kind of the same.
It's very interesting that at Radar we're doing something very similar. So that they're based in Lithuania, so I'm not there very often, but they're going through because they've hired a lot of people recently, from coders to kind of more general staff, and a lot of them, even though they work in blockchain all the time, they don't really have any personal interactions with it. So and it is quite kind of eye-opening because we all know how to do it, and even people who are working in blockchain companies. A lot of them don't have the experience. They don't know what they're doing.
And for us, it's so important also because our background is traditional free-to-play games. So still up to now, a lot of people coming from traditional gaming industry, when they look at what are those blockchain games, they still have a lot of perplexity about calling it even a game based on what we've seen in past NFT-based games, so that I had to force and reduce that friction and apprehension they had, and try to show them by testing that there's interesting aspects behind.
Any hands? I'll keep going. Now I have to go and give you the microphone because we haven't got any. This is going to get problematic. I have to run around. Tell us who you are.
Thanks. Scott from Pubmatic, which, again, I'm not entirely in this space, so I hope it's not a silly question. But in terms of NFTs, in terms of how I understand it, so the unique aspect of that product is what's kind of valuable to the user or someone that's buying it. And obviously, as you mentioned previously, you can kind of export those into different games, those NFTs. Is there a possibility for potentially copycat kind of products or NFTs that other marketplaces might produce, especially in terms of how they look? That could be a problem for selling those kind of bespoke or unique NFTs. Is that something which is happening at the moment, or is a potential problem in the future?
If you go to an untrustworthy marketplace, you could buy a fake anything. But the best thing, one of the best things about blockchain stuff, NFTs included, is that you can be, as long as you're somewhere that's trustworthy, then you can be sure you're getting what you want. But you still can't trust that a marketplace may lie to you, might say we're doing this properly, but if they aren't doing it properly, they could be lying to you. In terms of like images being reproduced, it's kind of irrelevant because it's just an image. Like you could copy the image yourself anyway. If you want the item and it's a marketplace that's following the protocol, you know you're getting the real Baus or Neon District item or Sandbox 3D item, you know for sure. One of the best things about it is it's fraud-proof.
Yeah, yes, and also because it's public on the blockchain, you can track who is the smart contract that originally minted that item, so you can prove it's originally from this game.
Good. So we will venture into pre-sales. I think one because I know Alex has a certain view on it, which I am, which other people may not have the same view. So I think all of you have done pre-sales fairly successfully. And I guess one of the kind of issues with pre-sales will be kind of even at a heavily discounted rate, you're basically setting a price for something, which you're maybe overtly or maybe not so overtly suggesting could be an investment, could be worth more in the future. You're probably not actively saying that because you'll then be some sort of security or something. But having had successful pre-sales, do you feel like your community has kind of accepted the pricing, even if over time the price of what they paid hasn't been sustained by a kind of marketplace trading? You see what I'm getting at? You're looking very confused at me.
Well, I guess there's two things. One is, has the token gone up and down in value and therefore changed the price of the NFT if you kept it at the same coinage? So if you take them two things apart, when we launched, I don't know, our first 50 weapons, that was all a pre-sale. And actually, we didn't know what to price them at.
No, that's the thing. How do you price them?
So we took so we knew the price of our coin, right? So we decided to what's a decent price? £5, £10. Let's start with that, and let's see what happens. Right, and we didn't have too many, and you kind of get an idea about what the market's prepared to pay for it. And we still adjust it now, but I think to me, going back to the pre-sale, I totally get what Alex is saying, but it is about building the community, and that is the important thing. It's about people talking about, wow, you're going to be able to play it in this really cool game, and people start talking about it, and it's about building that up. It wasn't for us to make money. It was to get people talking about it, and we kind of we're adjusting the prices.
But money, because money is part of the equation. Then
but at the time,
whether as developers you're overtly doing or not, then that'll be one of the key things that your community will be very focused on. I mean, Marguerite, you did pretty successful pre-sale. How have you felt? I mean, obviously your game is now, so you.
I mean, so we've been in development for about 2 years, and I'd say that the pre-sale, it's tricky because the game isn't live yet.
Yeah.
And we really do believe in community and having a healthy community. So we just actually announced a delay until July. And so we have now people holding pre-sale assets with another 6 months delay, and that takes a toll on how we feel towards our. I mean, we wanted that. It's like an investment that they've made, and we didn't deliver on our ship date.
Yep.
So, I mean, we have to be responsible for that. So I think the model actually of having the game, when the game is live, being able to support other developers, and I think Sandbox is set up to do this well too, being able to allow other developers to do a sale, but where other games can support those assets right out of the box. So it may not be aesthetically what it's going to be in the future game, but it can be approached more like a crowdfund opportunity. Like, hey, we're trying to build this game. These are the assets that it will be if that game goes live. But in the meantime, you can play with this. We partnered with these different games, and you can play it here. I think that is a great solution.
Yep. What about? I'll just leave you out, Alex. Patrick, you were pretty successful. Actually, you were very successful kind of pre-sale.
Yeah,
You've done a few. You've done 2 pre-sales now, haven't you?
Yeah, our first pre-sale was definitely more successful than the second one.
Yeah.
So we're kind of in the same boat as you are. The problem being that we originally promised to launch whenever Decentraland launches.
Well, you can still fulfill that promise because they haven't launched yet.
Yes, yes, true. But
not your fault.
Then it turned out that they got delayed a bit, and they launched next month. Which is good, but originally we promised to have content playable earlier than we anticipated. No. Yeah, you know what I mean. So people, like players, investors from the first pre-sale asked the valid question or raised the concern, like why would we buy into another pre-sale?
So you felt that was the
we felt
the second pre-sale?
Yeah, we felt the impact of that, and we originally thought of selling more crates during the second pre-sale, but the problem was and remained that we couldn't like fulfill their promise we had initially planned for them. So there was really no like added value towards a second edition of NFTs, and we originally planned the game to be seasonal, which we still are committed to. And once there's content out, I think it makes a lot of sense, like sort of like additions in trading card games. But if there is no content and content is king, then the value will go down, or like the overall sentiment in the community will.
If they're not usable in the game, then the only thing the community can focus on is whether they're trading at any value, and they won't be because you haven't got a game. So there's like a vicious kind of loop going on there. I mean, obviously, Sebastien, you've got your second land pre-sale, and I guess you're going to have 3 or 4,
yes,
total, because you've got a lot of land to sell. I mean,
Well, I do believe on the topic that first, and to avoid maybe a situation where Patrick has been into, is we have been transparent from the first day on what's our land pre-sale plan. Exactly like you said, we'll have 5 rounds in total and not one single more. So there's no surprise or hidden things. And the second thing back in my previous presentation is like, I believe, of course, we are building a game, and the pre-sale are a great way for funding or attracting an early community, but it shouldn't hide that the target of a pre-sale and potentially the target audience of the game might not overlap as much as you think, or the users that are going to come in your pre-sale and be your early adopter may not be the one that come later after and going to play your game. Just because, well, most of the gamers, they need to see a game to be excited by it, not just to see I'm going to buy into some e-commerce discount and things like that. In the design of our pre-sale, so there's many ways, just generally speaking, in terms of pre-sale, there's auction-based, there's flat price, there's crate box. I think that covers mostly the 3 main design I've seen in terms of pre-sale. We chose not to go into auction or crate box, loot box, because we wanted to be to have something at a fixed price that's not going to announce potentially speculation, or, as you say, convey the idea of it is potentially an investment behind. But every game has good reasons to go for one way or another, specifically if some of those non-fungible tokens are going to influentiate in enormous ways the gameplay and allows you maybe to earn more by giving you better vehicles or characters that potentially give you a higher chance of winning.
It was interesting that the recent pre-sale for Striking, I don't know if people saw that. So Striking, as Robbie mentioned, is a German developer doing a kind of a real fantasy, doing a football game with they do real deals. So they've got a license for the Bayern Munich team, and they did a whole bunch of NFT sales over Christmas, and now they're doing some more. But what was really interesting about it is they have a 3-month, no questions, money-back guarantee on pre-sale, which I'd never seen before. I don't know if people have seen that. So basically, you can, and I think that the whole lot went for about 550 ETH, so it was quite fairly substantial amounts of money. But I guess because of what we've been talking about, kind of the impact of whether these things are going to sustain their price, you can pay that, and then if it doesn't work out, you can just sell it back to them, which is. I don't know if I should. I don't know. I mean, it's clever. It's good kind of retailing, but I don't know whether that's something we should applaud or not. Really, I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's a way to protect consumers. Like, if we don't deliver the promise within 3 months, like, you're free to just get a refund on what you bought, or just keep it and wait for us to deliver. So, I really think it's an interesting design.
Mm-hmm. Alex, you've not spoken about this, so you're the one who kind of raised it. So where do you think it's going?
So I say that it's not a black and white thing. What Seb said is correct. There are different options, and it depends on what you're trying to achieve. Are you trying to raise lots of money? Are you trying to develop a community? Are you trying to attract real players or crypto people? At the moment, it's just crypto people, really. So, like, I think with the auction mechanics, I think are fantastic for when you've got a very small number of rare items, and I think because they generate stories and the community love watching it. Yeah. You know you can't afford it, but it doesn't matter. You want to see who can afford it. You want to see them competing. That's what happened with Baus, actually. It was really and it went wrong, which was even more of a story, so we did it again. But So I think auctions have a place. I think fixed prices are really important. I mentioned Kickstarter type model because that's something we were exploring at FIG. I was working at FIG for a while, and basically Kickstarter is a reward-based crowdfunding. So you can imagine paying $50, but for your $50 you get the game, if it's a premium game, let's say, but you get this set of items, and there's only 50 of those items available. And I think if more of the pre-sales were constructed in that way, and more of the game done before the pre-sale, and then a nice fixed reward structure and done as rewards, not just as single items, I think that would be interesting. And then it's the loot boxes that, yes, Andy wants a question. It's the loot boxes I worry about most. I don't mind loot box mechanics, actually, but I think you just have to be very transparent as to the odds, and you shouldn't be relying on it too much, and the costs just started getting out of control for what you were getting, I felt. For games that when a game has been released or is very close to release, I'm much more forgiving of it, but everyone completely understandably was doing it in very early days, and it was too early.
Yeah. Right, let's go and get a question.
It's related to pre-sales.
That's good, that's fine.
Hi, Andy here again, Blockade. We actually built a football game called Nifty Football with a pre-sale. And a bit like some of the people at the front, we've not really delivered on the game yet. But one of the interesting things we found in the pre-sale is that a lot of people buying the cards aren't interested in the game. Because, like you hinted on earlier, people are getting interested in the finance, flipping the cards, treating it as an investment. And we found that all these people who are buying it really wasn't invested in the product. They were invested in potential value of the tokens. Do you think this is to the panel, do you think that's a good thing, a bad thing, or a bit of both?
I'll answer just my bit really quickly because I own some. I think something like what you're talking about actually worked because they had quite interesting art. He had like an artist who was quite known. He had very recognisable style. Yeah, and I think that sort of thing does work best as a collectible, but you need an app that's about collecting. This is something that infuriates me that we've not done this in our space. We've talked about them as collectibles. Where's the flicking collectibles application? Where's my Panini sticker album of NFTs? Yeah. Where do I know that I've got 9 and there's one more to get? We need that. Then that's the sort of game which would work really well for that. And then it's fine for it to then they will gain value, and I think it's a perfectly acceptable reason to buy them.
We'll just quickly say on that point, Animoca Brands bought it's not a blockchain thing, but bought an app called, is it not Dig? What's it called? It's something... Something, it's not very helpful, is it? But Animoca Brands bought an app, something called Dig, and it is purely a free-to-play mobile game where it's all about collectibles. So you kind of have loot boxes, you pay the in-game currency, you have a kind of loot box mechanic of what you actually win, but the whole point is to get a set of collectibles, and then that increases your value as a player in terms of the leaderboard. And the cards you don't want, effectively it's cards, the cards you don't want, you can just sell off in a marketplace. So presumably they are bringing that, they're using the Harmony blockchain apparently. So that will be an interesting...
It's Quid. The name of the platform is
That's
Quid.
it. Thank you very much, Sebastien. Yeah, so that's one interesting, worth checking out. That's right.
So I have 2 feedbacks. I think first it's part of your game design and what kind of game you're building. In our case, I was looking at the metric after we did the pre-sale. So we had something like 171 unique wallet address that bought let's round it to 3,000 lands. And we look also at how many wallet address did actually sell and bought on secondary marketplace, and the number is 39. So that's quite a reasonable number. And as we chose to enter the space of making blockchain game, having true ownership of the content and decentralizing our part of our economies, I think we cannot go against the idea of some of our players should and can and should do this kind of trading, flipping, and finding an opportunity to win money potentially through that. So yeah, I think we should embrace it. Actually, I would love more people to do that, because somehow that's also potentially how it will grow after.
So in answer to your question, my view is that the game should start to come first before the NFTs, because until the big game studios start to get involved, the EAs, the Activisions, and we're now, obviously Ubisoft's coming in, Square Enix have just announced something, Microsoft stepping in, that content, that IP that they start to bring in, well-known games that has NFTs attached to it, is how this market grows fast. the market is just too small at the moment. In the scheme of games, blockchain games is tiny, and it needs a brand, and it needs a well-known game to apply NFTs to it, that people start to understand what it is. And if I take our game as an example, which is a mobile game with an NFT trading platform, you're absolutely right. They are two different players right now. We have traders and we have gamers. And it's how do we connect those? And we're actually a small amount do connect, but it's small. And we're coming at it now from, it's difficult with Apple, but we want to tell people that are playing this game about these tradable assets. And you can go and get them out here, and bring them in slowly, and start getting it, because it needs that to light the fire. So I really think is game quality, get them in there, and then offer this to them, which kind of kills the whole pre-sale part.
Well, I think, I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. I mean, I think on your point about the brands, I think one of the interesting things, I've banged on about it already, and I've banged on about it a lot, is the Blanco's Block Party game. Which is coming out in the summer now, because that is all about the brands, as far as the conversations I've had with them. And nothing officially announced yet, but if you look at who's invested in them, and if you look at the brands they do have whenever someone gives a talk there, those are the big, those are like the Marvels. One of the guys there used to work at Hello Kitty. They got, and also they're building an interesting game. So it's nothing to do with the game itself is not built by a blockchain game developer, it's built by a game developer. So that, and that kind of plays into what you were saying, and also plays into what Alex's thing about, real world brands kind of coming in, and that raises the level absolutely right up. Sorry, I interrupted. Marguerite or Patrick, you got anything kind of to say about the speculators versus the gamers?
Yeah, I absolutely agree with Tony. I think we are game developers first and foremost, and we want to make games, and games are supposed to be fun or competitive, and I think that's really important, and it also drives value a lot. We're actually putting part of the trading fees back into a tournament pool. Mm-hmm. So whenever we host these tournaments, which are in part also sponsored, we just had our first, is then an incentive to compete against each other and hone your skills. We've just in our first tournament had somebody win or take the huge reward. That guy wasn't a whale, but he beat the whales by a long shot. Mm-hmm. So that sort of thing can drive enthusiasm if you figure out the best strategy, the meta, or the best combination of stats. Really, that's how you keep the community engaged, and the ones that are focused on the other loop, the trading loop, they can do that. It's fine. It's why we're in business also. But I'd like to see an environment where the fun is the focus.
Do we think blockchain games actually need NFTs? I mean, we've got very focused, partly I think for technical reasons, on that's what Ethereum does. But could we imagine games that don't use kind of NFTs, at least as we imagine these? Because we imagine them, I think, as kind of single items of that we own with value attached to them. Is that a slightly monolithic approach? Does anyone think? Well, one of the examples I will say is so I played a lot of EOS Nights, which was obviously running on the EOS blockchain and did have a marketplace, but it was pretty hard to find. And in some formal sense, it was a blockchain game because everything was running on the EOS blockchain, but it didn't really have NFT. And on EOS, you don't really yet have NFTs in that kind of same way. So I do kind of wonder whether our view of it is very much focused on Ethereum, on what Ethereum can do at the moment, rather than what the future could be in terms of the technicalities. And even like Plasma Bears, to a degree, it has NFTs, but you can explain what Plasma Bears is, but as we discussed last night, for me it was like the first time I played a blockchain game where it was just really good fun, it was very lightweight, and there wasn't any of the hassle that comes with blockchain, and it has a really great community. But it wasn't focused in any way, because it was an experiment, I guess it wasn't focused on NFTs or values, even though you could trade them. It just seemed to be a very refreshing experience.
Yep. Plasma Bears was exciting because it allowed people to gift these assets for free on a layer 2 application, web-based. And what was cool about that is we could do, so you get a link and you could gift to your friend on social media, maybe someone that never had an NFT before, and now all of a sudden they have an NFT and they can go make their own bears. That draw, we wanted to see how sticky that was without having any of the normal barriers to entry. Like, what does that look like? And it was pretty sticky. I mean, we've talked multiple times about how, I mean, it's so lightweight that it's just basically a text adventure where you collect NFT parts, like from when it's time-based. Anyways, yeah, we could have spent more time on that, but what we found is there's not very many active gameplay, like active games with NFTs. And that's what we thought really is going to have the retention that people want. It's more exciting when it is your asset and you own it and you love it and you're making it do things or interacting it, leveling it up, growing it. So like Neon District has all of those pieces that we experimented with Plasma Bears. And we want to have that same sort of sharing piece or crafting your asset. So I forget your original question because you kind of sidetracked me.
Doesn't matter. I think everyone when I said my original question, everyone just looked at me like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
So we'll ignore that and move on.
But the question being, like, can games not have these NFTs? Well, you're seeing blockchain. So I'm hearing and we're seeing these game companies become more siloed, which seems to me like the opposite of what blockchain really wants to do. And so I think that you're going to have a few of us very experimental companies that really push that boundary, and it's going to be challenging we'll see where these companies that are sitting in the middle, how they're going to bend and adjust according to what users want. I mean, our bet is that users and developers are going to be really interested in that open collaborative space, which really is the ethos of Bitcoin and Ethereum in general. So who's going to be driving the directions of these companies and where is the value going to sit? I think the value really sits in the community and the talent you attract outside of your game company.
Plasma Bears is why we're doing this other game that you guys have kindly offered to do, because I said, I really like Plasma Bears, but there's no real game there. So what I want to do is, without your permission, just create a big war game where all the Plasma Bears go and fight, and all of them die except for one, which is one of the really kind of cool things you can do. Yes, you can do Battle Royale with Plasma Bears. I think, and I know we had a Twitter conversation about this week or last week, because I found myself making this mistake myself. You kind of forget you're making a game sometimes, and you design too much around the NFTs. And I just said, I had to stop myself and say, why do people play games? There are lots of answers to this. I'm not here to give the answers. We're all game developers. Why do people play games? And then how can NFTs be of some benefit, like to enhance that experience? We've got too caught up with the secondary sales stuff, with the valuations. It's not that it's not relevant. It is. But we've got too caught up in that. Let's go back to basics. Why do we make games, whether it's Space Invaders or Fortnite? There are outcomes. People play for all kinds of reasons, and we just need to go back to that a little bit more. Plasma Bears is a good example, because there's not a game there, but for some reason there was something fun about it. Yeah,
I mean, just the fact you got someone you didn't know emailed you a part that may be useful, may not be useful, that was just... And I think you even had it in your daily list. You had was it 3 a day you could do? And as I remember, it said gift an item to someone, and there was just you found someone's email and just emailed it, or I can't remember even how the ID system worked, but it just felt really nice that these people, you could have found out who they were, that you might have known them or you might not have known them. It just kind of felt like a really nice community, and it was, but there was no worth in it. It was very lightweight, but maybe it's just me, I don't know. Go on, Seb.
Yeah, but if I may add to this, if we look at traditional mobile free-to-play games, I think there's some mimic around in blockchain gaming. In terms of mobile game, it really took off with Angry Birds, but now it's already past. The gameplay of throwing and playing level-based kind of games is already out, and we've been moving from trends to trends, and I would say the latest trend in mobile gaming is 2 or 3 gender of game blending. So it's always match 3 and city builder, so there's a core game and there's a meta game. And I think in terms of blockchain gaming, we've seen the similar trend passing, where it started with CryptoKitty collectibles. It has been plenty of clones around it, and it saturated the market. Players had no more fun playing these kind of games, and then we're moving to the next step. So we are now at the moment of, in 2020, the next step of games, including Neon District or ourselves are coming. But potentially in the future, I'm really seeing that it will start blending 2 or 3 gender of gameplay, which might combine the NFTs, other incentive, and potentially even financial aspect. And there might be more things that we don't even know about, but could be fun. Like you said, like if we can make investment fun and a game, I would take it. So that kind of resonates to me.
Yeah, so I think we're all trying to work out the NFT, what's going to happen in 12, 18 months and where's this going to end. I'm looking at this now as you're seeing the speculators and you're seeing rare NFTs and everyone goes on about the price and stuff. But I do see NFTs as going back to content is king, is a way of driving people to the game that have found these bits of content outside of the game and gone, ooh, what's this? Where can I use it? So it's almost, I'm looking at it as a user acquisition tool. It's a really cool way of marketing your product. And we've just announced a deal with an American company called Silicon Nexus, who have arcade machines, proper big arcade boxes that go into theme parks and are, real arcades, and there's about 6,000 of them in the States. And when you win a prize in these arcades, like the claw hammer or whatever, normally a ticket comes out and you go and hand the ticket in at the end and you get your little cuddly toy. Now the ticket comes out and you go to this NFT machine and you can choose digital content, of which we've just supplied them a ton of guns. And that they're going to go and they get the wallet instantly on their mobile by tapping on the machine. So now they've stumbled across digital content. They've stumbled across a really cool looking gun, and they will be going, now where can I use it? And there'll be a link straight back to our game. I've acquired a user through an NFT, and then they start going, oh, I can actually use it in other games and I can trade it. That I think that's where I see at the moment the real value of an NFT today, because the secondary market of trying to get more money for it is so small still. It will happen, and I do believe in the rareability and the great stories that come out of these NFTs selling for a fortune. But at the moment, it's a little community, and we're in $151 billion games market, and we need to tap into that like really quickly. And I think this is one way where NFTs are really useful.
I think to add to that, one part that is really underexplored still at the moment is proper ad tracking, or figuring out how to target these ads, because we have all these NFTs and it's like visible for everybody which address bought NFT from Neon District or land in the Sandbox game, or some I mean, most of the time right now enthusiasts have stakes in all these games, but it would be really valuable in the future if the market matures more to find out what kind of user buys into what kind of game, so you can serve them with ads. And it's
what are they going to think?
I mean, yeah, I'm probably not going to like it, but it's it will happen, and I think we cannot really close our eyes when it comes to that.
Just one small addition. We talk a lot about lands on our platform, but we also are tokenizing user-generated content. So 3D assets and model made by any artists, creators. And the value of those is actually multiplied tenfold when those game items can be used not into one single game, but already potentially 100,000 on our platform. And also because there are NFTs and the visual representation as voxel is quite standard in the game industry. It can also potentially be used by more game developers. And behind that concept, it will enable actual asset creators and artists to acquire some popularity. And as we are also working with brands like Shaun the Sheep, I was discussing with them, like, look, now you have access to all those game creators that can use your content and make fun game experience. So I believe this is really unique and exciting. So yep, I think really like the UGC and NFT comes very well together.
Good. Well, we'll leave it on that positive note. Thank you very much to the panel. Thank you for your questions.
Thanks, John.